the health trend is the right direction for Kenyatta Jackson, and today you can believe it.
Yeah, he looked a lot more, nimble. A little. He had his full pads on. Ryan Day comment on Tuesday made me think maybe it wasn't being entirely forthcoming with us.
You were a little bit worried, but we can dive into that much more because we are here on a Woody Wednesday for Snap Judgments on the Austin Birm Show. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Had eyes on Kenyatta Jackson coming off the practice field, as Birm mentioned. He had the pads on in Ryan Day's description as he got up from his lightning round after practice, trending in the right direction, short and to the point. Now, it's availability reports. It's Ohio State managing the meat of its schedule. It's going to be cautious. It's not going to put Kenyatta Jackson in harm's way. But, I think when you and I both kind of re-listened to what Ryan Day said about Kenyatta Jackson on Tuesday, and it was like he kind of delivered bad news in an upbeat fashion.
Yeah.
And now I think that was positive news delivered encouragingly on Wednesday night.
Agreed. Yes. Tuesday, again, you'll hear about this on tomorrow morning's episode of The Beat because we're recording these in reverse order today. But I've reread what he said on Tuesday. I was like, that doesn't sound entirely positive. And then, again, we were waiting to see what happened to practice on Tuesday, which we weren't here for. But today, on Wednesday, in the Woody, we got to see him walking in. He was one of the last guys off the field. He was in full pads, and there was nothing. So should be okay, I think. Now, the question is, as to your point, that doesn't mean a guy's going to be able to go 100%. Doesn't mean he's going to be out there full time. Doesn't mean he's going to play at all. But trending in the right direction is better than what I felt on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I do think that there's a scenario where Ohio State is better equipped to absorb that loss in the short term. There is no other Kenyatta Jackson on this roster, but there are a lot of positive things being talked about with the reps that Logan George got on Saturday against Minnesota. Bo Atkinson has been elevating his play. He was one of the Buckeyes that talked after practice on Wednesday night as well. Zion Grady made a couple tackles in the game on Saturday. So, you're maybe in this situation where Ohio State is always going to err on the side of caution, especially during the regular season. We've seen that over and over and over at a variety of positions, but, particularly given the physical demands at defensive end, if it's close, they don't have to force the issue because I think that the depth at defensive end, whether that is with those three guys that I mentioned or some configuration that involves a new role for Arvell Reese or sliding Peyton Pearson at linebacker, I think that they're better situated to get through this stretch against Illinois and Wisconsin than maybe I would have thought 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and Illinois is one of those teams in the Big Ten that their sum is probably better than their parts. And so it's one of those games where if Kenyatta Jackson is limited or if there's any sort of pitch count, you can reasonably assume that the guys playing for Ohio State, probably even down to the third guy playing, would be a starter at Illinois. That's not the case everywhere in the Big Ten, but this is one of those games, and Illinois is a good team. I don't mean to be disparaging, but it's not a talent-equated game. And so you can look at this for Ohio State, monitor it on Thursday, make sure that travel day on Friday, there's no, extra problems that show up, and then rock and roll.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of newsiness, that is where it almost starts and ends for Ohio State on this Wednesday night practice. They had the speakers on. I was outside at the end of practice. They had the crowd noise. They had music playing. They're dealing with that. I don't know that it's certainly not Washington in terms of the noise, and there's going to be a huge amount of Ohio State fans, it looks like, that are going to be traveling based on the hotel rates, and a lot of people that are talking about the ticket prices that were available to them. So, this matchup is certainly different. Tomorrow on The Beat, Three Things Thursday, we'll get into that much more. But was there anything else in terms of immediacy tonight that you think we have to get into?
I mean, I do think that's an interesting discussion. There has been virtually zero talk about how this is a road game against a top 20 team that a lot of people had penciled in as a potential playoff team at the start of the season. And just because they lost one game to another potential playoff team doesn't mean that Illinois is disappointed. I mean, yeah, they disappointed in one game.
They did lose by 53.
That certainly changes some of the way people view them. But there hasn't been any discussion about how do you prepare for this road game. And Ryan Day, they have music going, but I bet it wasn't as loud as the music that when they were preparing for Washington.
I don't think it was.
Right. So,
again, that's anecdotal. I didn't take out the decibel meter with me.
It's also like, well, that was the first road game. Now you've experienced it. How much of that is just like a first timeness thing where you have to discuss it a bunch and you have to talk to your guys about it and prepare them. And now you can say, well, you guys are road-weary veterans now.
You've done it once. You're not a freshman anymore.
Yeah, so like
first time this is gone.
But it is still a part of the discussion. It's not one of the Big Ten cross-country flights in 3 time zones or anything like that. But it's still weird to play a football game at 11 a.m. when you haven't done that since you were 5 years old, probably, for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So we talked to Jeremiah Smith and Max Clare and Josh Padilla on the offensive side of the football. Had Arvell Reese and Peyton Pierce talking for the defense. Am I missing one? I feel like Bo Atkinson.
Yep.
So a pretty good mix. Several different positions preparing for this matchup physically against Illinois. Like, as you mentioned, this is a good team. They had playoff aspirations, and they still do. They're not eliminated from the Big Ten race. They have 1 loss on the resume. It is grotesque and ugly and hideous and horrifying. But if you can cancel that out with a win against Ohio State, I think a lot of people would forget about that in a hurry. So Ohio State they're well aware of that, that Illinois is capable of, when they are at their best, giving them a challenge. And I think, Max Clare and Peyton Pierce specifically, talked about that. They can see where the challenges are going to be, and they've got to rise up to that moment. They have to be, let me think. They've got to be desperate, and they've got to be hungry.
Yeah, which you are at 11 a.m.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
I mean, body clock, so it'll be lunchtime.
Yep, you got to eat. This was not a group, and we joked about it before we came on the air and before we got to the school earlier, but we know on a week-to-week basis, is this a night when something might get said that's ooh, or a little juicy? There really wasn't any of that tonight until Peyton Pierce said something that I thought was interesting.
I was hoping that you would.
There was a lot of discussion this evening about the Ohio State defense and how it's growing. And so a lot of people, of course, wanting to give Matt Patricia flowers as you're getting ready. And Peyton Pierce was asked about how much he speaks with Matt Patricia. And he said that he probably talked more with Matt Patricia in the first 2 days that Matt Patricia was working at Ohio State than he talked to what he called the former defense coordinator in the whole time he was here. And I was like, I appreciate him,
The DC out east?
The DC out east. He didn't have any problem saying, hey, that it's a much different relationship. And he didn't say the name, didn't want to, and it's interesting because, I don't think Peyton Pierce would be here if that former defense coordinator hadn't gone and saw him play. So it's an interesting sidebar to, again, that's something that's probably going to come back up in 2 weeks more so than it's interesting tonight. But it is a telling reminder of what Matt Patricia's impact has been on this team and the way that, because the one thing that Peyton said was that Matt Patricia's mantra is that it's not even about the process, it's about the people, it's about the company, it's about who you're doing the process with. And that is we look at it from a schematic standpoint a lot of times, and throughout the last 7 months, you're like, well, they're not going to reinvent the wheel here when it comes to the defense, because there's a lot of the key parts still in place and a lot of the philosophy still in place. But clearly the personal side of the relationship that these guys have with Matt Patricia is making an impact on these players more so than maybe is being discussed. And we joke about how much Matt Patricia's hugging people, and there's always fun.
Oh, I'm not joking about that. I'm deadly serious.
It is very telling that the relationships here are different, and that's.
Can you tell me what you mean? You mentioned maybe Peyton Pierce wouldn't be here if it had not been for the DC out east. I've always been of the mindset that the James Laurinaitis relationship.
Sure. But James Laurinaitis wasn't the full-time linebacker coach at that point, so it was. But he couldn't go out recruiting. He couldn't do a lot of the stuff that Jim Knowles had to go and approve it. Jim Knowles had to say, "This is a linebacker I want." And looking back, we'd probably think, Jim Knowles was not a dynamic recruiter by any stretch when he spent his 3 years at Ohio State. And so, the one linebacker that he had to go and beat Notre Dame for, obviously with the help of James Laurinaitis, it struck me as odd that that's not a guy he would have poured a relationship into. But it's a reminder that every coach gets there different. There's more than one way to skin a cat, I guess.
Yeah, no. I don't know that skinning a Bruin was that easy for him. But
no.
That's those
Bruins are bears, though. Bears are harder.
That's true. They're much more aggressive. Yeah. Anyway,
depending on the size of the cat, I think.
So that pretty much summed it up on defense. Kenyatta Jackson and Peyton Pierce playing a lot here. Offensively, I think this team this is a vibe. I think they're licking their chops about what they've seen from Illinois. And I would have not thought that'd be the case, because that's sort of where that's been their hallmark the last couple of years. They've forced takeaways. They've got an aggressive defensive front, but they're giving up darn near 300 yards a game through the air. And when you have, like Jeremiah Smith was talking about, sort of like, well, what's the next thing that you can do offensively? And he said, well, Carnell showed what he can do on the other side, and he's an elite wide receiver, and teams are going to be aware of that. And then you have Max Clare, and then you have Brandon Ennis, and then you have the tight ends, and then you have the running backs. And he's like, the wide receivers will kill you, the tight ends will kill you, the running backs will kill you. And those are the words that he used. Like that, I know that Jeremiah Smith speaks from the heart, and he's that truth teller, but it's also correct. Like you will be killed by the Ohio State offense one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So, and in this case, Ohio State has to figure out what the skinning is going to be. I asked Max Clare
I think Peta's going to shut down snap judgments.
I don't know why that Greek bread has any influence on what we do. Big Peta, we're not afraid of you. You're delicious. Naan is better, though. If we're going to talk about, like,
we're not
international breads.
We weren't.
No? Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, America, just remember, go to Kroger and get your naan bread. The little mini ones are awesome.
Yeah, take that, Greece.
Yeah. Stupid. I asked Max Clare, because, again, a little preview of something that will be talked about on the beat on Thursday morning is
teasers in the industry.
Ryan Walters, who was Purdue's former head coach, now the defense coordinator at Washington, he got the Purdue job because of the job he did with Brett Bielema at Illinois as a defense coordinator. These are all the same tree from Matt Patricia's defense. And so this is another one of those weeks where you're like, well, maybe we kind of understand this defense, and so now we've attacked it once already 2 weeks ago. Maybe you have a different approach. And I asked Max Clare, is there any validity to that? And he said, no, because he said
what are you going? You're undermining tomorrow's show.
They planned. Well, I mean, I'm just telling the truth. They planned for Washington to play a lot of 5 down. He said, and then they didn't do it at all. And one of the things that they're talking about this defense is that it can rotate. It can easily mix up 3 down, 4 down, 5 down, like Ohio State does. But again, Illinois doesn't have the players to execute it the way Ohio State does. But I thought it was interesting. Like those are not advantages that Ohio, or at least not Max Clare, who we're developing a relationship with. I don't know exactly how much truth he's willing to unleash on us, but
not a Jeremiah Smith amount.
Yeah, it was interesting nonetheless, because I would have, being a simpleton, I would have thought, hey, well, this is very similar to the defense you played 2 weeks ago. You should have a better idea of what they're going to do. And then I realized, well, people don't know what Ohio State's going to do from play to play. So how do we expect the Buckeyes to be that ahead of the game when it comes week to week against a totally different team?
Yeah. My favorite thing to do on a Woody Wednesday. Take note.
Last guy off the field.
Last people to leave. They still haven't left, this trio. It's Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Peyton Pierce, the Texas Tornado Bro, and the hugger himself, Matt Patricia. He's been sitting over there, Matt Patricia, holding court with some of his defensive stars for at least 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. I love it when guys love ball.
We also saw,
and they love being around the Woody.
We also saw Jeremiah Smith getting on the Monarch machine as soon as practice was over, joined by James Peoples. There's other little things. The last guy I saw walk off the field, now these guys are still in the indoor, the last player I saw walk off the field was Tavian St. Clair.
Black stripe alert.
Who had his black stripe removed on Tuesday. And I'm going to dive into the psyche, I guess. Like, I've known Tavian fairly well. Like, there's been moments that when I've seen him in the last 8 months where he looks a little shaken. That was not there today. Like, this was a different side of him. Like, he waited. I was actually having a conversation with Max Clare at that time, and Tavian sort of slowed down to wait to talk about it. So, like, I think that's a really good sign for the future. And it's not going to
everybody hits that point as a true freshman. Like that, one thing I know for sure from, watching a lot of the, recruiting videos, recruiting coverage, when you have developed relationships or got to know some of these guys, you've told them all. It goes back to Billy Price for the first one. They're going to try to make you quit. And I'm not saying that it's anything that Mickey Marotti did or Billy Fessler did or Ryan Day did. But the process and the day-to-day survival in this building is so hard.
It is.
No one can fully appreciate that until they're in it. I can't. I just know from experience and hearing the stories, all, 1,000 of them over the last 15 years, that like you're either gonna quit when you reach that breaking point, or you're gonna break through and they're gonna be talking about you and they're gonna put you up there for the developed here stuff. And so it is very significant and meaningful for these guys when they get, it's not just a black stripe. It's like the moment that you realize that you can do it.
It's a reminder. Ohio State's played Tavian St. Clair in a football game this year. So like, it's not like the black stripe is just entirely perfunctory or entirely just window dressing. Like, it means something. Even though they've played him in a game, they still have questions. That black stripe removal is a reminder of trust. And that's something Ryan Day talked about first thing tonight, was about trust. He talked about it on Tuesday in his press conference also. Like, it's about trusting the coaches and trusting that the players need to trust the coaches. Coaches need to trust other coaches. Coaches need to trust players. And Tavian St. Clair, his I'm telling you, it was different. Like, that was a kid who was like exhaling for the first time in 9 months. And it's not going to matter for this season for Ohio State. It may not matter next season because Julian Sain will have another year of eligibility, or 2 or 3, which we can talk about the CJ Hicks conversation and the evolving nature of that in a moment. But it was just different. And then, you know, again, going back to the Peyton Pierce conversation, he said that the reason that the relationship with Matt Patricia is important is because it helps them trust that he's got their best interest at heart. And I'm not saying that there was questions about Jim Knowles and the best interest at heart for Ohio State players, but we have been in this building enough to know that a lot of stuff does not get said by accident. Like, it is just what they're thinking. It's pretty interesting. I just want Tavian to get a shout out because I think people are comparing him to other freshman quarterbacks around the country, and his path is not going to be the same as anyone else.
It was never going to.
It was never needed to be. And that's the need is the biggest part, that like for a young quarterback coming into a program like this, you see all the success and you think, well, it's just going to be easy for me to have success. And it's not. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how big your upside is. He's been in this building since last December and spent his entire spring break here as a high school senior, and the entire summer here heading into his senior year. And it still takes this long to get to the point where the coaching staff says, you know what, you can take that black stripe off. We trust you now. And that is so important. And it was very obvious to me that Tavian St. Clair had a different pep in his step and a different look in his eye. And I think that, like, there comes a point when you start to wonder, like, okay, is this guy going to get it? And now, like, you see it and you're like, okay, got it. But
once you get it, once you think you got it,
then you're going to get it.
So you asked me on Snap Judgments on Tuesday if I thought that Ryan Day was more annoyed about the redshirt conversation with Malik Hartford and CJ Hicks than I expected, or what I anticipated, or what I thought to be the case or the reality for those two. And I said, yeah, he did seem more annoyed, and maybe it was more complicated and complex than it was initially presented. And then on Wednesday night, he was asked about it again. And I would say if he was a 9 on Tuesday, he was like a 10 on Wednesday.
Yeah, but the assignment of irritation has shifted a little. Like, it's the NCAA. He said, you know, the NCAA is talking about 5 years to play 5.
Yeah, he lumped in a new level of frustration.
Right. So, like, it's like, well, we don't know. Maybe CJ actually has 5 years of eligibility, but the NCAA doesn't do anything on a time schedule that actually helps anybody that's playing the game. So, clearly, again, deflecting the notion that it is a decision that's been permanently made, saying, well, if he needs to play 20 snaps next week, he's going to play. If he's going to play 25 or 30 snaps, he's going to play. The conversation, and maybe it's just because of the way these questions are couched, none of the times that these questions have been asked in the last 2 days has it involved Malik Hartford beyond the initial voicing of the question, where he's just included. Which make of that what you will. But it is interesting that Ryan Day now is saying, hey, there's a chance that CJ doesn't even need to redshirt because he can still play another year anyway.
And he said that they were going to take that week to week based on what they were projecting. He said if CJ Hicks for a game is only going to play on special teams, then they're not going to waste a year on that. Now, unfortunately, that did already happen in year 1 for him on campus, but there's nothing that can really be done about that now. But and this is not excluding Malik Hartford from the conversation as a slight on him, but if you look at the actual snaps that those two players have played, CJ Hicks, that was a month and a half ago that he had Arch Manning in his grasp and he was throwing him to the ground. I don't know how that pass still got off, but he's coming around the corner. He was on the penultimate, the final snap for Texas of that game on a 4th down and pressuring the passer. He has been involved. I think that is why this is new territory and why it is worth discussing. His role, we've actually already seen it. Now, it's not the most prominent one, but Malik Hartford currently doesn't really have one. There was no rotation at all between him and Jalen McClain in those early games, and there hasn't really been since.
Yeah, but it's a role that was getting more prominent because of Kenyatta Jackson's injury issues. Yeah. And, I don't know if it's a coincidence that the decision or the conversation came right after Kenyatta's game at Washington, where all of a sudden it looked like the light came on and you're like, okay, we actually are good here because this is the Kenyatta we've been waiting for. But then Saturday happened and he missed another game. And so CJ is on the sideline wondering should I get my helmet or not? So
he needed to get more pads.
Nothing ostensibly has changed about the messaging from Ryan Day, which is we're taking this week to week. But it was notable that they are kind of waiting for the NCAA to suggest or to confirm that there's going to be 5 years of eligibility for these kids instead of 4 years of eligibility in 5 years. It's just going to be 5 because guess what? If the Buckeyes make it to the Big Ten championship game and the playoffs and the national championship game, CJ Hicks is going to play 9 games anyway.
It's incredibly dumb because 4 games is a third of the season anyway for everybody. Yeah. I can't even, every time.
It's a quarter of the season for anybody who makes it to the national championship. And then you can play the playoff games and it doesn't count anyway. So you might get 9 games out of a guy and they go, well, this season didn't count for him.
If you think we're bad at math, get a load of the NCAA.
They're stupid.
So dumb.
So on this episode of Snap Judgments, PETA, eat it. NCAA, you suck.
Eating pita is a good idea. I like pita bread.
Yeah. Again, I was not talking about that organization. I want to be very clear. No, thank you. I'm talking about the bread. Give me that bread. Straight up.
Straight up. Thanks for joining us for Snap Judgments on a Woody Wednesday on the Austin Birm Show. We added too many titles, I think.
Whatever. So Thursday is the beat at 5 a.m. 3 Thoughts Thursday. Probably have a little talking stuff in the afternoon just to recap last weekend's official visits. Ohio State won't be playing back at home for 3 weeks, so there's not going to be a lot of content to discuss on the recruiting front. But
folks had visits.
Folks did have visits, and they were important. And then Friday morning, we're off on the road to Rhode Island.
Illinois. We're going to
Champaign,
Illinois. That's where we're going. We'll have bold predictions on that show Friday morning on the beat. Looking forward to that. Thanks again for joining us, whether that's on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV Plus, Apple, Spotify. Apparently Roku, I was told, is another option.
Yeah, I think Amazon has their own Prime podcast. I mean, you can find it anywhere. It's really up to you, America.
So, make your choice.
Make your pita sandwich, sit down and pick your platform.
I don't think it's called a pita sandwich.
What is it called?
I think it's just a pita pocket. You fill it and you eat it. A sandwich is like 2 pieces of bread. Right, America? Right, Greece? Back me up. We've gone off the rails. This is the end of Snap Judgments on a Woody Wednesday.
Tacos are just hot dogs.
I don't know what that means. We'll see you later.